Hello, my name is Susan Stewart, and I am the Assistant Director of the State Performance Plan Technical Assistance Project, or SPP-TAP. SPP-TAP is funded by the California Department of Education through a contract with the Napa County Office of Education. This is one of several recordings introducing you to significant disproportionality. This series of recordings is foundational to understanding what significant disproportionality is, why your LEA has been identified as significantly disproportionate, what technical assistance support is available to you, and a little bit about the history and research underpinning the significant disproportionality work. You can access the rest of the recordings from the significant disproportionality page on the caltan.info website. This particular recording is about the federal requirements and California implementation of those requirements to address significant disproportionality. In a moment, you'll be hearing from Dr. Jack Brimhall. He's the educational administrator for the Focus Monitoring and Technical Assistance Unit at the California Department of Education Special Education Division.
Every significant disproportionate LEA in California is assigned a focused and monitoring and technical assistance consultant from the California Department of Education. These folks are here to help you. The consultants support and monitor the assigned LEA, and they are your direct point of contact at CDE. Your assigned FMTA consultant will be contacting you. If they have not yet reached out, they will, and you can also email us using the email address on the slide to contact the CDE. Before I discuss the history of the Individuals with Disability Education Act, I want to remind everybody that the IDEA provides the legal mandate for the processes we're discussing here today. IDEA's purpose is to ensure that children with disabilities have available for them a free, appropriate public education that meets their unique needs and prepares them for further education, employment, and independent living. It aims to ensure that the rights of children with disabilities and parents of such are protected. This is really important work that we're doing. We also know that individually and collectively, we have an obligation to ensure that each and every student is served and protected. When we see disparities in outcomes for students based on race and ethnicity, it's not just a legal mandate, but it's a moral imperative that we move to take action on this injustice. So let's look at some of the history with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and how it pertains to significant disproportionality. In 1975, we had the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. Then in 1990, we got IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Then we had the 2004 amendment. National data demonstrated that students receive different services based on race and ethnicity. It's important to note that this amendment did not eliminate child find. Its purpose was to protect civil rights given the disparate outcomes based on race and ethnicity. The more recent 2016 amendment established more consistency in these protections as there were great variations with how states monitor disproportionality and significant disproportionality. Now let's talk about some of the federal requirements for this important work. If we look at the state performance plan indicators, specifically 20 USC section 1416A3 requires states to monitor special education outcomes through 17 different quantifiable and qualitative indicators. 4 of those indicators are focused on disproportionality. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, 2004, provides for the identification of districts with significant disproportionality. So let's figure out what disproportionality really is. It's the overrepresentation of a particular racial or ethnic group in comparison to the composition of the LEA in one or more of 4 areas. It could be discipline, it could be placement, it could be disproportionality overall, or it could be disproportionality by disability. Let's talk about the disproportionality element of discipline. Students with disabilities by race and ethnicity, suspended or expelled, greater than 10 days outside of school, less than 10 days outside of school, greater than 10 days in an in-school setting, less than 10 days in an in-school setting, or any discipline. If we look at placement, we're talking about students with disabilities by race and ethnicity spending less than 40% of their day in the general education environment. So that's one way to calculate. The other way would be students with disabilities by race and ethnicity that are in separate schools or in residential facilities. Let's talk about disproportionality, indicators 9 and 10. Indicator 9 is disproportionality overall. The percent of racial and ethnic disproportionality of students identified as having a disability. Indicator 10 is disproportionality by disability, the percent of racial and ethnic disproportionality by disability in unique disability categories. So what is significant disproportionality? Well, it's very similar. It's the overrepresentation of one or more of the 4 areas of disproportionality. It's got to be in the same area. It's got to be with the same population, and it has to be 3 consecutive years. Let's look at our disproportionality system and compare the two. For disproportionality, it's obviously just a 1-year calculation, and those LEAs identified as being disproportionate will complete a compliance review. LEAs identified as being significantly disproportionate are going to have a 3-year calculation. They will have fiscal implications, and they will have to complete an improvement plan. Let's look at some of the characteristics of both disproportionality and significant disproportionality. When we're talking about the identification through special education, that happens both in disproportionality and significant disproportionality. When we're talking about the focus on special education, there's a difference. Disproportionality is focused on special education, where significant disproportionality is not. If we're looking at the focuses on root causes of the disproportionality, that doesn't happen in disproportionality, but when an LEA becomes significantly disproportionate, we want to focus on the root causes. We want the LEA to get out of disproportionality and significant disproportionality because that's overall good for kids. When we're talking about the requirement of systemic work in the general education environment, that's going to happen for LEAs identified in significant disproportionality. And when we're looking at improving results and outcomes for students based on race and ethnicity, that happens in significant disproportionality. Again, that's why it's such important work. Let's talk about some more of the regulations that require us to monitor significant disproportionality. 34 CFR 300-646, the state shall require any LEA identified under paragraphs A and B of this section to reserve the maximum amount of funds under section 613F of the Act to provide comprehensive, coordinated early intervening services to address factors contributing to the significant disproportionality. There's where the fiscal impact comes in because it's federally required. Continuing, the LEA must identify and address the factors contributing to the significant disproportionality, which may include, among other identified factors, a lack of access to the scientifically based instruction that students deserve, economic, cultural, or linguistic barriers to appropriate identification or placement in particular educational settings, inappropriate use of disciplinary removals, a lack of access to appropriate diagnostic screenings, differences in academic achievements, policies, practices, or procedures that do contribute to the significant disproportionality. Continuing, an LEA must address a policy, practice, or procedure it identifies as contributing to the significant disproportionality, including a policy, a practice, or a procedure that results from the failure to identify or the inappropriate identification of a racial or ethnic group or groups. Continuing on CFR 300-646, an LEA may use funds reserved for comprehensive, coordinated early intervening services to serve children from age 3 through grade 12, particularly but not exclusively children in those groups that were significantly over-identified, including children who are not currently identified as needing special educational or related services, but who do need additional academic or behavioral supports to succeed in a general education environment, children with disabilities. An LEA may not limit the provision of comprehensive coordinated early intervening services under this paragraph to children with disabilities. Let's talk about the Compliance and Improvement Monitoring, SIM, for significantly disproportionate LEAs. So a few years ago, the California Department of Education modified our monitoring system to ensure it was consistent and comprehensive throughout all phases of monitoring. We were able to merge the CSACE process into our current compliance and improvement monitoring process. It includes all the elements required under all the federal regulations. LEAs identified as being significantly disproportionate have unique differences in the development and implementation of their plan. The SIM plan is developed for a 3-year timeline period. Some more significant disproportionality requirements are that LEAs will be required to develop a SIM plan in order to provide comprehensive, coordinated early intervening services. They will have to set aside 15% of their IDEA special education funds. They will have to submit quarterly progress reports, and newly identified LEAs will be provided a prescribed number of technical assistance support hours through the State Performance Plan Technical Assistance Project, or SPP-TAP. If you'd like to contact us, the CDE contact is on the left side. Feel free to email us, sigdisp@cde.ca.gov, or give us a call, 916-324-8898 or 916-445-9772, or contact our friends at the State Performance Plan Technical Assistance Project. You can email them at spptap@napaco.org, or go to their website, which has a ton of great information, and it's spptap.org.
Thank you for listening to this recording. These introductory recordings provide some foundational information about significant disproportionality. In the identification methodology recording, you will learn how local education agencies are identified as significantly disproportionate by the California Department of Education. The remaining recordings in the series will give you an overview of what technical assistance is available to you as you address significant disproportionality, and also provide a brief history of how the comprehensive coordinated early intervening services to address significant disproportionality came into being and what we've learned along the way. You can access the rest of these recordings from the significant disproportionality page on the caltan.info website. On this slide, you'll see that we have an introductory webinar on February 18th, 10 to 11 a.m. These recordings that I've just mentioned are the pre-work for that event. So we encourage you to view all of the recordings prior to that event so that you will have this fundamental understanding of significant disproportionality prior to that meeting, where we will delve deeper into what this means for you and your LEA. There are 2 more events that I want to give you a heads up about. Both of them will have pre-recorded pre-work. The Step 1 workshop is an in-person event. These will be held throughout the state, and they will occur in February and March. Keep an eye out for an email with information about this event, who should attend, and which workshop to attend. The Step 2 workshop is a virtual event. There will be some pre-work that it will be recorded that you'll want to watch before that June 18th workshop. We look forward to seeing you at the introductory webinar, but in the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact the California Department of Education at SIGDISP, that's SIGDISP, at cde.ca.gov, or you can contact us at the State Performance Plan Technical Assistance Project at SPP-TAP at napacoe.org. We look forward to seeing you on February 18th.